a lot of hate against foreigner drivers.
Why
Because
is
you want me to use questions? They're just a truck driver, a dumb truck driver.
Hey, but you got to remember, I'm in the industry. You're not.
well, welcome to the Truck Stop Show. Today we're joined by Matthew, and he is a truck driver for a long time. He'll tell us how many years, and he has truck in the U.S. in the past because he's an American by origin, but he's moved to Canada now, so he does trucking here in Canada.
Yep.
So let's talk to Matthew. Matthew, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here with
Thank you.
for
And
having
tell
me.
us about yourself and what you do.
Well, I've been a truck driver now for about 6 years, and I'm in fuel now. I've always kind of been into bulk liquids, so a tanker yanker, such as yourself. And I started out actually in my trucking career back in farming. So we have family out in South Dakota, so I'd go out there during the harvest in October, and we would haul grains, corn, stuff like that over to ethanol plants on a farmer's permit. Basically, I didn't even have a commercial license. So,
Right.
And then
So
from
just to
there,
clarify, as a farmer, you
Mhm.
do not need a license, right?
In some jurisdictions, in some states, I think there's a certain age minimum that you still have to be, but it's like a probationary license. You can't drive from, let's just say, in the nighttime hours. So you can drive from sunup to sundown, not over 55 miles per hour, and you have to be doing it for farm-related activities.
And then which
and
state
work.
is that? I know that's in
That
the
was
U.S., right?
in South Dakota, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of that within those, so to speak, flyover farming states. But I could be wrong. But that's kind of how I got my start. You know, driving old international trucks and the old Volvos that farmers had that they'd spend $5,000 on.
Yeah.
And that's just what they had. And then
Right.
I kind of fell in love with it then. Me and my twin brother both are in trucking, so that's kind of both how we got into it.
So is it fair to say it's self-taught?
I would say self-taught then, yes.
Yes.
And then, of course, I've learned so much over the years, you know, and I haven't been in the industry that long, but it's still.
I think 6 years isn't long enough.
Yeah, it's definitely long enough to kind of know the ins and outs, at least of my specific field. But I really got into it once I got my commercial license. I was actually right before COVID, so I got my license, found a really small mom and pop place to work for that hauled scrap metal, and that was in St. Paul.
St. Paul?
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yep. So I did that for about a year. I hauled crushed cars. I hauled just lots of scrap metal to and from junkyards and up to basically big recycling facilities. So it was funny. I got my license. I had a job lined up and everything. And then my broker called me and he was like, Matthew, I have good news. The metal recycling plant is on fire right now. So it is going to be great for you, is what I wish he would have said. What he was actually telling me that I didn't hear was, hey, the metal recycling plant's on fire.
Wow.
And we're going to be down for like 3 to 6 months. So you're just going to have to figure something else out in the meantime so we can rebuild.
Right.
And I was like, as soon as I started, I ended my trucking career like that.
So basically, you had a
Yeah.
job, but you didn't have a job.
I didn't have a job. I thought I did, right?
Right.
So of course I still worked for them and did Class B or DZ here and just did dumpsters and roll off and stuff like that.
So a straight truck.
Straight
just
truck.
to be clear.
Yep.
Yes.
And so I did a lot of that. And then once the plant got up and running, then I started hauling scrap again and I loved it.
Right.
And then there just came a time where I was like, you know what? I want to go see the country. I think I'm going to go do over the road. So I worked for a big mega carrier, and I personally had a great experience with them. I worked for them for about 3 years, and it was great. I would be on the road for 21 days. They would fly me wherever.
21 days.
It was 21 days away from home, but
you don't go
still
home for
had
21
hours
days.
of service. Yes, of course. So away for 21 days. But at the time, I was a younger guy. I'm 28 now. Back then, I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, and my wife Sasha, now who I moved here to be with, we were just in a long distance relationship. So it didn't really matter. We were still communicating through FaceTime and text messaging and phone calls and whatever. So it worked out in our favor. And so I went over the road for 3 years. Like I said, 21 days on, I would go all over the place.
So do you remember that exact moment when you decided to get the truck license, even though you knew how to drive trucks before?
Oh, yes.
But
do.
I mean, what was
Yeah.
that thought process like? For
Yeah.
my question is, what made you come to this point? Was it an optional thing, or you were
Mhm.
like, "This is what I enjoy. I think I should go into this."
That's a good question because I was thinking about this on the way here. I said, I want to talk about how I got into trucking. And it was actually kind of romanticized in my head, right? Because my twin brother drove truck already. And
So he got in before you.
yeah, he got in before me.
Right.
Back when I lived in South Florida,
Mm-hmm.
he went and got his license down there. And just had a hilarious story about getting his license.
Mhm.
And he hauled boats in South Florida for years. So he was already in the industry and would talk about it all the time. And we're twins, so we're close. I was jealous and envious of the work.
Are you
he was
guys
doing.
identical?
Identical, yeah. So
Woo!
it is,
That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
exactly. And then, you know, we just kind of followed each other around in terms of our careers. And it was really fun. So uh, I was actually in the trades at the time in terms of like I bounced around from trade to trade to kind
So
of
what kind of
find out
jobs?
what I
Just
wanted to
odd
do.
jobs you were doing, like
Yeah,
factories
I
and
did
stuff?
not necessarily factories, but like HVAC, electrical, plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
I settled on plumbing for about 9 months. I was an apprentice. I got like my I got a certification in water softening and things like that. I was doing installs, but working on my apprenticeship to basically it would have taken 3 to 4 years to get my what they call journeyman license in the
Mm-hmm.
states to be
Mm-hmm.
a journeyman plumber. So I thought I would love it because my dad, he's been in the trades. He was a master HVAC guy, and he's been doing it for his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, you know, I'll just do what my dad does. You know, find something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll put food on the table and help me raise a
Sure.
family
Yeah.
one day. And I just didn't like it. I hated it. I'd go to work every day, and I just really did not love what I did. So I remember I would be riding in the plumbing van in the passenger seat looking out the window, and I'd be watching the trucks drive by me, you know,
So it
because
was pulling you.
yeah, it was pulling me. And I
Yeah.
remember all the fuel tankers that would pass me for the big companies in the Midwest at the time, you know, they would pass me and I would just be like, it must be nice. Those guys are so lucky. They have the windshield as their office
Do you still
and the
carry this
highway.
opinion that
Yeah,
they're lucky?
absolutely. Well, you
It
know,
hasn't changed?
it's changed a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, because then I'm like, well, those guys are lucky, but I didn't realize they're working 14 hours a day,
Yeah.
you know, and working 6 days a week. But you know, you learn the hard way,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I did that romanticizing of it for a while, and I just finally just snapped one day, and I was like, you know what? Like my brother's a truck driver. He'll get me into it. He got me a job at that scrap metal
Mhm.
place, and I loved it. I got to go to work every day, work with my brother,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just fun. No one's breathing down your neck. It was a really small company, and that really like made me fall in love with truck driving.
Right.
But still, I wanted to do the tanker stuff, so that's why
So was that
Yeah.
where did the tanker come from?
that came from laziness from doing scrap metal and
Is there a lot
and
of
hauling
physical
crushed
work
cars.
involved?
There's a lot of physical work in terms of I used to haul like a 3-sided steel trailer that had a
Mhm.
big curtain on the side, and they used to make you climb up the side of this 13-foot-6 trailer and huck really big chains over it, and then you'd have to chain all the cars down. And then I was like, you know what? This is so physical. Why am I doing this to myself?
Tankers are physical too.
I didn't know at the time. I was
Oh,
young and
okay.
naive, and
So
I was
you
like,
thought
you know
you
what?
guys-
You don't have to throw straps or chains. You close the dome lid and you go. How hard could it be? Right. I learned the hard way, of course,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Just jumping
yes.
into something. But it was a really great learning experience for me to go from something like hauling scrap and doing cars to then going into the liquid bulk world. Because, I mean, they just threw me on the road and said, good luck. Here's your dispatch. Let me know how it goes, you know?
So no training.
Oh, there was training.
Some
Yeah,
training.
yes.
Okay.
And they did have a great training program. It took
Mhm.
about 3 weeks. They flew me to Texas, and I was down there for a while. And of course, I'm a young man, my
Mhm.
first time traveling, you know, my country at the time, and I was like, you know what? I'm in Texas. I'm going to go explore, have fun. It was a great way for me to get out and explore my young adult life and just kind of see the country. And it was really fun. So I met a lot of great friends along the way working for this company, and they sent me over to Utah. I was stationed there for like a year and a half. Then they sent me to Maine. I was out there. Then I went back down to Texas, and then everywhere in between.
So all
And,
different directions, eh?
It was great. Yeah,
Yeah,
I really got to
yeah.
see like every like geographical, location of the states and experience all the climates that truck driving has to offer you, and it was really fun.
So
Yeah.
if I do the comparison between the scrap metal, which
Yeah.
is to an extent, let's put it a flatbed, it's kind of let's say it's
Mm-hmm.
flatbed, And if you compare that with tanker, which one you think is more difficult?
I would say tanker for sure because I did food grade when I started.
Right.
So they had the smoothbore tankers, and in the States we only haul up to 80,000 pounds for the most part for highway transport from state to state. So at the time, they're taking an 8,000 gallon tank and you're only filling it with about 6,000 gallons. So there's a lot of space in there for product to slosh around. And especially with those smoothbore tanks and product as heavy as milk and water, you felt it, and that was a learning experience for me to know that if I take a corner too fast, I'm rolling this thing over. If I don't hold my foot on the brake at the stoplight, I'm rolling into the car in front of me and then rolling into the one behind me too. So it really taught me a lot about, just that side of the business and liquid bulk transport. And then that was a really fun experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So now that's for the most part your American side of the story, right? So then you transition into Canada.
Yep.
A lot of people go from Canada to the U.S., but you were one
Everyone-
hell of a guy who
everyone
came from
always says, yeah.
from the U.S. to Canada. So tell us what made you take this decision,
Yep.
and then we can do a comparison between American trucking and Canadian
Absolutely.
trucking.
Yes. So the main deciding factor was, of course, long story short, met a Canadian woman, fell in love. Here I am, right? So where I lived in Florida at the time, my wife's parents had moved down there. They lived here for years. They left Canada, said, I'm sick of the cold. We're going to Florida. I lived down in the Keys at the time. So I lived in Key Largo. Her parents moved down there. They bought a boat at the dealership that I worked at the time.
Oh,
So then
that's how the story started.
Yeah, so that's how it started. And then I found out her dad was in a certain line of work that I was really interested in. So I'm like, all right, cool. Like we got to talking and conversing, and then I would go over to their house for dinners and lunches and stuff like that, and just kind of hang out with them. I made friends with them. Then a year and a half goes by, and they're like,
It
hey,
didn't start with Sasha.
no,
it
it did
started
not.
with her
It started
parents.
with her parents. Yeah.
Okay,
So then I had basically like a labor of love with her parents,
Right.
and I didn't even know that she existed for the first like year.
Wow.
They're like, yeah, we have kids and
that's
stuff like that. So
That's a nice story.
and but it was a really cool experience. So then I found out that she was coming down to Florida on vacation with one of her friends from Canada. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't seem too interested. They kind of made the joke of, don't try anything with my daughter, And I was like, no promises, right? And but of course, she comes down, and long story short, we get to talking, and she was not interested in me at all at first. And then of course, you fight, and you lay it on her, and of course, eventually she broke, and she's like, all right, I think you're kind of interesting. I got her phone number, and then fast forward, long distance, and then the conversations came about to, who's going to move where, and how are we going to do this? Well, at the time she was in undergrad up in Ottawa, and she did her master's down here in Waterloo. And me, I'm a truck driver, so I'm like, well, my education is simple: go to trucking school, get my license, drive. Yours was 6 years of finding a major that you really wanted to put your time and effort into, and that's the direction that I was kind of leaning. I'm like, you know what, you've put all this time and money and effort into being in a very specific career. I can't ask you to pull yourself out of that and come to the States, because I don't know how that would transfer.
Fair. I think that's quite
So
fair.
I could truck drive anywhere. I just got to get the license. So I said that was like the first major
You had the
thing.
license at the time, right?
Yes, yeah, I had the license in the States, but
Right.
at the time I thought it transferred over to Canada.
Right.
I was like,
And I think
don't-
an average
yeah.
person would think this way.
Yeah, everyone thought that there's
But
like
it's
a
not the case.
reciprocity. It's not the case. I got here and learned the hard way that the only thing that transferred over was my boater's license, my motorcycle license, and my regular G license,
But not the commercial license.
not the commercial license. So I had to go to a trucking school, and it worked out. I was able to find a great trucking school, and they worked with me and got me on the road in a fair amount of time, fair amount of money. I got nothing to complain about. 5 stars, But yeah, basically, long story short, like I keep saying, is her career path and her family. That was the other big thing. They're a really big connected family. So that's what kind of brought me here. I have a connected family as well, but they're much smaller. I mean, I can count them on one hand. You know, I got
So,
like
so now you moved to Canada. Now
yeah,
so then you went to school here. You got your commercial license,
yep,
and now you're hauling fuel,
yep,
right? And then you're working locally.
yes, yep,
And if I were to ask you, is truck driving different in Canada than the U.S.?
absolutely,
Even
yeah,
though it's all the same,
mm-hmm,
same trucks, same safety culture,
mm-hmm,
same type of infrastructure,
yep,
right?
yeah.
But how do you see it?
I would say I thought about this a lot too. Just of course you do that natural comparison in your head, like, oh, this isn't how we did things back in the States, or oh wow, this is a lot different. One of the examples is like your axle spreads and your axle weight ratings here are much more. So like, you know, you'd see a lot of tandem axle trailers in the States, unless you're in like Michigan or South Dakota where they have like, you know, 8, 10 axles or something like that. But on average, your regular run of the mill trucks in the States have, you know, 18 wheels, and there are 2 tandem axles on the trailer. I came up here and I saw 3 axles on a normal dry van trailer. I'm like, okay, they're allowed to haul more weight up here. And of course, when I got into fuel, that's when I started to see the B trains and the doubles and stuff like that.
They don't have them in the U.S.
They, as far as my knowledge goes,
Not for the most part.
they don't have B trains in the States, unless I thought I saw a couple in Washington State and Idaho, but I could be wrong. Um, they mostly just have they do have doubles there. They go on a different scale in what they call them. They'll have turnpike doubles, which are like the LCVs here, and then they'll have Rocky Mountain doubles, which is the full size like 53-foot lead and a pup behind. But there's no second, fifth wheel like there would be on a B train here.
Right,
There's
right.
just the pinto hook and converter dolly, and they're impossible to back up unless you find someone who's really good at it and has been doing it for years.
No, no, you
Yeah.
happen to do this now.
Yes. So
Right,
now I do B train
right,
and or Super B, whatever you want to call it.
right.
But
Mainly, I think B trains. Yeah,
yeah, I
usually
think
B.
out west they refer to it a little bit differently, but you know, it's tomato tomato. So,
Hmm.
uh, but I've main differences are I still kind of operate in imperial, so pounds. You know, 80,000 pounds in the
Yeah.
States is like 140,000 here.
Yes.
Is like what our average weights are. I
Right.
can haul up to 63,500
What about the
kilograms.
culture?
The
Is
culture.
culture different? Like let's suppose the yard
Hmm.
culture. You know, these truck driving yards have their own culture, right? You
Hmm.
meet a truck driver, you talk to the dispatch, you talk to the company, the way they approach you. It's a culture, right?
Yep.
Is there any difference between the U.S. and Canada?
I would say a lot of that, at least from my experience so far, had something to do with the hours of service regulations here too. So
Right.
the culture kind of changed when you came up to cowboy country Canada, and you can drive more hours in a day. You know, in the States you can drive 11, here you can drive 13, and of course you're allowed that extra couple hour reset. But um, that alone, you know, was a really big change for me. I'm like, oh wow, driving 13 hours a day. My on-duty clock's now 16 hours in a day of a running clock. Like, I have more time to work with. This is great. But I understand that they need that in Canada. There's so much land and ground to cover that how are you supposed to do that in 11 hours on
It's
a
a
US
great
clock,
point.
you know?
I
I
never
mean,
thought this way.
trying to
That's
get
a
something
great
from
point.
here
Yeah.
up to Timmins or,
Yeah.
you know, here up to way northern Ontario or out west. I mean, you don't have a lot of roads and infrastructure up north and the country parts of Canada to, you know, actually deny the fact that you need more hours of service here to operate. With that comes, of course, you know, people who've been in the industry for a long time who are used to running those 16-hour days, 14-hour days. And
Now back to my original
mhm,
question.
yeah,
Let me rephrase it this time.
sorry, yeah,
Are we? No,
yeah,
no.
I kind of went off topic
My
there.
question is: are people nicer here than the U.S.?
I guess state by state basis, you know.
Oh,
I'm from
yeah.
Minnesota originally, so the saying there is Minnesota nice. You meet truck drivers there, they're all old white people, right? That's what you get. And they're all farmers that eventually got into trucking, and they were the type of person that, you know, if you blew a tire on the side of the road, in the country at least, not in the city, they're going to pull over and check on you or ring you on the CB and ask you if everything is okay and if you need a tow. And I've seen that here too. Not so much in Toronto.
Nobody uses the CB
Yeah.
around here anymore.
No, it's very rare.
Yeah.
But in Toronto, I would, even if I had it on, I wouldn't hear a thing going through the city at
Well,
all.
they only use
Yeah.
them for prayers in the morning sometimes.
Yeah. Or you get the people on Channel 6 with their super high power systems who are yelling at you in the CB and stuff, which is
Yes,
just funny
yes.
to hear. But um, Yeah, in terms of Canada, I guess it all depends regionally where you are. You know, if I'm in Toronto with the hustle and bustle, I don't find that you're going to get the same, you know, um, like accommodation for if you need roadside help that you would out towards this way, you know, in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. And that's really all I can speak for. But in terms of the industry, it seems really similar, you know, in terms of
Doesn't change, right?
yeah, I mean, in terms of the type of people that you get
Mm-hmm.
and everything else like that,
Right.
it seems very similar. I know in Canada there's, you know, a lot more people who come from different countries,
Right.
like myself.
A lot of immigration,
Yep,
yes.
I'm an immigrant truck driver
Yeah.
myself, so
Me too.
you know that's just how it goes. Immigrant truckers,
Here we go.
but you know, it is really interesting. Like in the States, you see that too. It's just regionally where you are. You know, if they have incentives for immigrants to move to Minnesota, for example, you'll see a large Somalian population there, and they get their truck driving licenses, and you know, they kind of have, you know, like their respective, you know, like areas that you'll run into them at. In Canada, it's just very interesting because I know Canada is built on immigration.
Right.
You know, if you ask
Well,
someone,
so is U.S.
of course, yeah.
But there is more national pride, I think, right?
I would say so. Yes, there's a lot of national pride in the States, but there's also a lot in Canada in like the
Correct,
last
yes.
year. I've never seen this before.
Yes. There
Yeah.
is national pride in Canada, but I think there's to an extent national immigration welcomeness
Yeah, absolutely.
too at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
Right.
let's say you go down to one of the Bible Belt states. You know,
Mhm.
you're in Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri. You'll have a lot of people who've just they've never ran into like people who are from different countries before. They only know their small
Right.
like group of people.
So they've never seen
Yeah.
a person
So
that is
they
new
may
to
be
the-
giving you
yeah.
a weird look, like, "Where are you? What are you doing around these here parts, boy?" You know, you get that whole attitude.
Yes.
They just don't know any better.
Yes.
You know. Whereas here in Canada, I've always said it's beautiful how much of a melting pot it is. You know,
Mhm.
you go to Toronto and you could meet any and all flavor of person that you want.
Mhm.
You know,
It's true.
and
it's
it-
very diverse.
and it's really cool.
It's very
Yeah,
diverse.
and even working in Toronto, I met a lot of the people that I worked with were East Indian people, West Indian people, people from Australia, South America, the U.S. You met people from all over the place.
Right. It's
And,
very diverse. Yeah.
It's
So
really
Matthew,
cool.
let's bring some fun into the show.
Yep.
So I will. It's almost like rapid questions.
Okay.
So I'll say a statement, and then you just say, "Let's see what you have to say about this."
Okay.
So what do you have to say to the drivers who pee in bottles while driving?
Oh, the old trucker piss bombs. Yeah. Well, what do I have to say? Gross, but I understand.
You understand?
I get
Okay.
it. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but dispose of it properly. All right.
Yes.
Don't throw it out the window and leave it at a truck stop. If you have to, that's like a secret private thing.
Yeah.
You know, you take it, you dispose of it. Don't make it someone else's problem.
Correct. Yes.
All right.
What do you have to say to the drivers who eat while driving?
Eat while driving.
And don't tell me you haven't done this.
Oh, I do it all the time. Right. And I
No,
know,
I'm saying,
I know
I'm
it's
saying having a
distracted driving.
meal rather than just nibbing onto something.
Oh yeah, well having a meal, it's just like, listen, are you in really that much of a rush? You know, pull over somewhere, and if you're gonna have a meal, I mean, it takes 5 minutes to scarf something down your
Right.
mouth and then keep driving. So
Right.
just do that. But I get it. Everyone has snacks, granola bars, and
Yeah. Well,
coffee and
snacking is
water.
different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you have to say to the drivers who say, "I cannot take a shower at the truck stop"?
Why? Truck stop showers are clean. For the most part. It all depends where you go.
Right.
But I mean, Flying J.
Yeah.
Pilot loves if you get 50 gallons of fuel, you get a free shower, and they put new towels in there every time. I always brought my own towel, and your own shampoo and body wash. But I liked truck stop showers personally.
And what do you have to say to the drivers who are always grumpy?
Oh man, my dad always tells me this. He's like, you can't be a truck driver unless you have a certain like level of grumpy. You have to just be existential sometimes.
Why is that?
I don't know. His theory to me, which I kind of agree with, is we spend so much time behind the wheel thinking to ourselves and just watching stupidity on the roads all day, every day, that it can't help but fester into anger and like being grumpy,
So is this totally normal to be grumpy as a truck driver?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to be grumpy.
Well,
Like,
I never.
we all
I don't
have
think
bad
you're
days.
grumpy like at all. Like I
No.
can't even imagine you being grumpy.
Exactly.
And you have done this for long enough. I think 6 years is a long enough time.
I've had my bad days, like we all have behind the wheel.
Right.
But you try to learn
Especially
from
if you drive in Toronto.
it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I grew up in a tiny little Wisconsin
Yeah.
town, so Toronto is a huge difference for me. Driving a truck downtown. Oh man, that really taught me some more patience behind the wheel.
What do you have
Mm-hmm.
to say to a truck driver who you meet in the yard and he doesn't stop talking?
Oh man, well, I've been guilty of that myself, and because I'm kind of a yapper, right? So, but I've dealt with it myself, where I'm like, I thought I was bad. This guy's terrible, you know? Because like I'll be doing, let's say I start my post trip before I get out of the truck on GeoTab or whatever app I'm using, and then I'll be just doing a quick 15, 20-minute post trip, and I'm just planning on going in, you know, and then leaving or going home, whatever. And then someone comes up to you and yaps, and then all of a sudden you look at your post trip and the time, and it's like an hour and 20 minutes. What? I've been here that long talking? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got paid.
And tell me, why do truck drivers do that?
Oh man, I don't.
It's a common thing,
my
right? You
theory-
run into a truck, even
Yeah.
at the truck stops, you
Yeah.
run into a truck driver and you start talking about something, even politics, current
Absolutely.
affairs, geopolitics, anything, and they just
100%.
don't stop talking, right?
My theory for that too, especially before like social media and phones were like, you know, so commonplace, was, you know, of course, again, you're alone and you can only listen to the same 8 CDs and the same 8, you know, songs or whatever you're
And
listening
then you
to.
memorize them by the
Yeah,
end.
and then
yes.
finally you see somebody who's in the same industry at the truck stop sitting down, and you're just gonna, oh my gosh, guess what I saw on this trip? Excuse me, sorry. And you know, you're just gonna definitely get excited about any and all conversation with a fellow truck driver. So, and I'm guilty of it. Like, you know, of course, at family events, you know, you run into the dentists and the lawyers and the doctors or whatever, and just like everybody who's not in necessarily truck driving or a trade. And they all have very interesting stories themselves. But, you know, when I meet another truck driver, I'm like, finally, a person who understands my everyday struggles. And you just sit and you just talk for minimum like an hour. It doesn't matter.
Are you a proud truck driver?
I was-
Are you
oh, yeah,
are you
yeah.
like, let's say you were at a family gathering and there's people from different walks of life.
Hmm.
Let's say doctors, paramedics, people in policing and whatnot, you name it. And then do you stand out there and be like, I'm a truck driver?
Oh, yeah.
Because
yeah.
I have met some people that are
Mhm.
very hesitant to say.
I can see how some people could be hesitant. And I saw that in Canada a lot. Maybe it's just because of how educated people are here. There's a lot of really educated people in Canada. Versus in the States, if you're out in the States, no one went to college, you know? So no one cared. But yeah, you come here.
We should have done this show in this
Oh,
accent. here.
I told my wife, I'm going to do a Southern accent the whole time, you know? No, but it is funny. And to your point, I've heard that too. And I felt like that at one point in my life. I'm like, all of my friends are they're going to university, they're going into this, going into that. And at the end of the day, I'm happy with what I do. I like my job. I like going to work every day. So that just kind of follows me into my personal life as well.
And it pays
Yeah.
well?
Yeah, and it pays well. You know, it puts food on the table. It allows me to enjoy my hobbies. It's not going to get me a mansion, you know, out in the country somewhere, but I don't need that. I don't require that.
So you
But,
don't have that feeling where you're in a gathering and you're trying not to talk about your work.
Oh no, I mean, I'm such a yapper. Anyone's going to hear what I'm
But I
doing.
mean, like like you said, you do understand why people do this because it's
Yeah.
a blue collar job.
Of course.
It's they're looked upon as a dirty person. I hate to say, but
Yeah.
they're looked upon as loner.
You could use a lot of the vocational work too. Like if you take like a trash man, someone who has a straight truck license, and you talk to them, maybe they'll have more reservations about talking about what they do for work. But you talk to those guys, and they're telling you how much money they make, and you're like, I have nothing bad to say about you, and I had no idea. Like they're making more than, I mean, half of the people that we know. Like in everyday life that you run into on the street. So it's like, you know what? You have to pay to play, and unfortunately, if you want somebody to haul your trash, you're going to have to pay them for it. You got to pay them handsomely.
Right.
So,
Matthew,
I
do
get
you
it.
have a favorite story dealing with a dispatcher in the US or here?
Oh, man.
Because, there's a very strange relationship between a driver and a dispatcher, right?
I always say the antisocial nature of a driver, sometimes talking to dispatchers is just the funniest thing.
Right.
Like it is hilarious, And
It's well said, actually. I
Yeah.
never heard this before.
And it is really funny. So nothing really sticks out, not like a specific story, but I had really good dispatchers when I was at that big mega carrier. And
And don't tell me you never had a bad one.
I've had bad ones in
Right.
Toronto.
That's
Yeah.
the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, they're the ones that would say, we have an emergency delivery. And so I live an hour and a half away from Toronto with traffic, So they would say, Matthew, your start time's 3 p.m. Can you get here any earlier? But then the previous night I was working 14, 16 hours. There's no way I can get home and sleep enough to safely operate a fuel truck the next day. So I would just have to tell these people, like, yes, I'll come in, but I can only work, a half shift, or I can do this or do that. But one of the ones that sticks out to me a lot is, here in Toronto, of course, like I said, emergency delivery. I got called at 1 p.m. and I was doing night shift at the time. So it was called me at 1 p.m. Can you be here by 3? We have an emergency delivery. I need you out there immediately. And of course, like, if everything goes well and there are 0 delays, of course I can be on time for you. But naturally in trucking, it's a hurry up and wait game, or there's always delays. Nothing ever runs on time. Like, how that goes. So I had to get to work and, there's no truck available, or, there's something wrong with the truck and I refuse to take it, or something wrong with the trailer and I say, I'm not taking it. So there alone, you just lost an hour. A customer's out of fuel. The gas station shut down. All the numbers are at 0 and people are waiting in line, and of course you get there, you're
No,
the
but
bad guy.
it's not your
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah, of course.
It's not. Is it dispatcher's fault?
I don't even know if it's them or if it's on sales or who you'd even want to blame for that. But somehow, whether it's the customer or the dispatcher, they're all yelling at you, right?
No, but the
Yeah.
pressure is being shifted onto you.
Yes,
As a
absolutely.
truck driver, one, it's unsafe,
Yeah.
right? If you're
Oh, yeah.
pressurizing the driver. Secondly, I mean, it's not going to work because the truck drivers can only move so fast,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They can't just break the laws and whatnot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's only so much I can do in a short period of time safely, So
Did you ever have a dispute with a dispatcher?
I'm way
Or
too.
you had to hang up the phone?
I'm way too nice. I'll let them have their spiel. Then when they hang up, I'm like, who the hell she thinks she's talking to? And then I'll have my little, like,
with yourself.
yeah, with myself, and then I'll just calm down, and then I'll call. Oh yeah, sounds good. Okay, well, this is what we're gonna do, and that's one of the trucking, attitudes that I don't have, is to just be that crass, harsh kind of guy, and I'm gonna tell you how it is. I've never been like that. So then when I would get back to the yard at the end of the day, or if we had a meeting, I'd sit down with them personally and be like, hey, listen, like, you can't be booking me like this. If you want me to stay here and be happy and be a good worker, then we have to find like some common ground here. We have to find something to agree on.
Right.
Whether it's, how you're going to be dispatching me, the timing of it all, make sure there's a truck available for me in the first place, So I had a great experience working with, I had loved my coworkers in Toronto. My dispatchers were great, but, of course, it's just a blame game. You never really know whose fault it is, because of course the dispatchers people are breathing down their neck to try to get the load out. So I can't even be mad at them unless they're in charge of, planning them.
I think, is trucking hard on family life?
I
I know you're a married man now.
Oh yeah, for sure. I always tell my wife, like, I know the answer to this question, but I'm like, what the secret to a long marriage is? She's like, what? And how would you know? And I'm like, to be a truck driver. I'm never home. You're always gonna miss me. I see you passing in the hallway when we're going to and from work. It creates demand.
It does create demand, yeah.
But,
No, but it
I'd
can
say-
be very difficult sometimes.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. And to give you a realistic response,
If you're
yeah.
not spending time together, right?
Yeah, like when I was over the road, granted we were long distance, so we were used to that dynamic. But imagine, like you, I'll put myself in some random other person's situation. You have a young family at home, kids and a wife, and you find yourself going over the road. That's tough on a family. Of course, your kids are going to miss you. Your wife or your partner is going to miss you a lot. And what do you do?
Do you plan to do long haul anytime?
No, I'm local.
No, but is
Yeah.
this because of the
Yeah.
marriage?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say it's way better on family life to be local, of course. If you can be home and watch your kids grow up and go to their baseball games or their sports or their events, whatever they have, then that's great. If you can find a Monday to Friday job, that doesn't work you over 60 hours a week, it's really hard to find in trucking. But
So
they're
so
out
you
there.
made this choice.
Yeah.
So once you got married, so now you're like, I'm not running the highway anymore.
Yeah, yep. So
And you made that choice, or it was a collective decision?
it was my choice, but we definitely shared the same, the exact same opinion about it. She was like, you know what, when you're here, I don't want you to go over the road. And I'm like, I don't want to either. We've been long distance this whole time. I want to actually live together and do our thing. And of course, I was able to come see her once a month anyway from all the time off I had. But once I moved here, we had the collective decision for, let's find something local, which is kind of why I wanted to go into fuel. So I was like, you know what, if I'm in fuel, I'm for the most part 90% sure I'm going to be home every night and running locally within my local area, so bringing gas stations to where my neighbors fill and where my family fills and everything
It
else
makes
like
you feel
that.
good, eh?
Yeah.
When you do this, I call this a community service.
It is a community service.
It is a
You're-
community
you're
service
boosting your
that
local economy.
You are actually playing a huge role as a truck driver in people's lives, eh?
Absolutely.
But it is work after all. But I mean, at the same time, but I mean, trucking is not as like it's not. No one highlights that how important this trade is.
You
Well,
hear about
people
it.
tend to hate us.
Yeah.
Like people tend to hate truck drivers because they're slow, they're crawling, they're causing
Why are you in
problems
the
on
left
the road.
lane? Yeah,
You see
all that
one
stuff.
bad accident where a truck is involved. Oh, is it got to be the truck driver?
Yep.
And then people are very judgmental about trucks, but at the same time, they tend to ignore that it's a very crucial trade.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw it with COVID, right? I mean, the essential work was truck driving. We still had to get things to grocery store shelves. I mean, you saw what happened when all the toilet paper flew off the shelves. I mean, who's going to restock that? Someone's got to bring it in,
Right.
And so of course, that's an example of how just crucial it is. I mean, everything you see from, everything in the studio arrived, all the building materials that we are, sitting around right now. The ceiling was transported on a truck or a boat overseas or a train or something. But primarily, its last mile delivery was on a truck, and I
Right.
had to get here. So I get it. We all hate being stuck behind trucks. It's not fun, even in my personal vehicle. I want to get around them as quickly as I can. I don't want to, sit behind them at 80 kilometers an hour on the 401. But sometimes it's just you got to slow down and just realize how much time am I really saving here if I'm gonna jump in front of this guy and cut him off, and and also those truck drivers deal with enough. We can only get cut off so many times in a day before we want to throw our, let's say something out the window at them. Whether it's a packet of ball bearings or your piss jug, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna end up doing something. So
That's true.
it's just don't piss off the truckers. Granted, it goes both ways.
Right.
There's bad truck drivers out there, and there's a lot of them.
Explain me one.
Yeah, there's bad truck drivers, people who camp in the left lane and they race somebody at 1 kilometer an hour faster. Just get out of the way. People who
What
Put us
message
in a
do you
rush.
have, Matthew, for those guys that are truck drivers but they have bad habits?
all the bad habits. It's hard to get yourself out of a bad habit when you've really dug yourself into one. But my message would just be, what's the rush? I'm talking to you. What's the rush? Like I don't understand. Like, I mean, bad habits are ultimately. I mean, you're in. How many tons of steel rolling down the highway? I mean, we've seen accidents and fatalities and like so many issues from bad habits. Whether it's texting or having a full meal going down the road or reading a book or watching a movie and stuff like that. It's just not worth it. So it's like ultimately I get it that it's a free job in terms of you can listen to a podcast or listen to music going down the road, and you can listen to audiobooks, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, that is your job. You're at work. You're clocked in. Treat it like work. That's your career, and have some pride in it too. That's your moneymaker there.
Right.
So, it's just of course I'm old school in the way. Of course, I'm not going to show
Old school.
old school in the way where I'm not going to show up to work wearing really short shorts and a tank top if I'm driving a truck. Like like ultimately if I'm dealing with customers and at gas stations or card locks, whatever, like I have to wear flame retardant clothing. So I'm in a big coverall all day, but it's just you're at work. Take some pride in what you do.
Right.
And that's really my message. There is,
Right.
if you're going to get into it, don't just do it because it's easy money.
Matthew, how do you manage to keep yourself fit? 6 years is enough time to
Get a trucker gut.
exactly.
Yeah,
So how do
absolutely.
you manage? So not just physically, mentally as well.
Oh, mentally.
I actually see it's a crisis, and it's ignored crisis
Mm-hmm.
where truck drivers are going into mental health crisis and even physical health crisis, and
Absolutely.
nobody's talking about this.
It is a big snowball effect because, like you mentioned, how easy is over the road trucking on families? What if you are going through a divorce or something with your children, or any major family event happens and you're away or you're on the road? Naturally, that's going to be devastating for somebody to hear or deal with when they're away, when they're on the road. And, I mean, and of course, most men, it's just natural. Like, we're not going to take care of our mental health. We don't even know how to deal with it or where to start. So going down the road, I mean, you have to have the foresight and forethought yourself to think, I need to do something about this. Like, I'm really like a danger to myself, possibly others. But, but to your question about getting the trucker gut, I had to thank my dad for my good genes and my fast
Can't just
metabolism.
be genes.
No, that's definitely probably one aspect of it. But my wife packs me lunch every day, and it's like a balanced meal. I get fruits and vegetables, and I mean, you name it, whatever. Homemade breads. I get muffins. I get all types of stuff in there. But she like kind of that's her love language. Is making sure that I eat a good meal. But to stay on top of it, I mean, look, you've been to Flying J's and Love's and everything. If people are lazy, they're going to go get that piece of pizza and those chicken tenders and those mashed potatoes, and if you do that every day, you're just naturally going to balloon up. So, but it's important. I used to keep, what was it? Like little weights in my truck and elastic bands, or I guess the bands that I had timed to my ladder on my trailer. And sometimes I'd hardly ever used them, but if I had an inkling to work out and take care of myself, I would go run around or, take a walk or do a little bit of arm workouts and stuff like that. But most people are never going to do that when they're truck driving. So,
Did you ever have a close call while driving?
oh yeah, I've had some close calls.
Is there
for sure.
one that still scares you?
There was one where I was hauling scrap metal at the time, and I was driving this old Mack, and no Jake brakes on it. It was an old CH600 Mack and a little 9-speed. So you just had to be, downshift and use your brakes and all that stuff. And it was in the middle of the wintertime, and I was coming up on Highway I-94 up to Rogers, Minnesota, up to the recycling facility. Sorry. And on my way up there was a snow squall out of nowhere. Like, no one got an alert, or like nobody expected it. Obviously, it was a snow squall, so it was just whiteout conditions. And all of a sudden, you're slipping and sliding. And I'm more so worried about the people behind me running into me. So that was probably just weather-related incidents like that. Especially here in Canada now. I've had a winter under my belt here of whether it's doing B trains or just hauling fuel in general. And when you're empty, I mean, you're slipping and sliding around, Like, I'd rather have a full load on me than be empty any day in the wintertime, So, but yeah, nothing crazy. I've been pretty lucky. My twin brother, on the other hand, he's had some really close calls.
Yeah.
And he does heavy equipment and oversized.
Oh,
and
we
stuff
all
like
have
that.
close calls.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how do we value safety? I mean,
Yeah. hmm
like everybody has a different approach to road conditions
Absolutely.
and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Matthew, is truck?
Mhm.
So towards the end, I want to ask you: is trucking a good trade?
Absolutely.
Is it pays you well? It's it's not respected enough. That's true to say.
Absolutely. And I don't care what country you're in, it's not respected enough anywhere, And I'm not trying to be a martyr for our trade and be like, I demand respect or anything, but just it would just be nice to have a little bit more. I'm not looking for recognition or a pat on the back or anything, but
What do you
just
think is the reason for this? Is it
oh
because we
man.
share the road with
I think
four-wheelers?
that's just like the main reason. Yeah.
That's
We're
one
we're, we're
reason.
all sharing the road together.
And have trucking companies who benefit a lot and make a lot of money from
Yeah.
trucking have failed to sort of get recognition of what we do?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so too. There's a lot of bad trucking companies out there too. I mean, we've seen it ourselves, right? Like, let's take like immigrant truck driving, for example. You'll have really bad trucking companies hang a PR over someone's head, get them here, have them spend lots of money, their life savings on buying their own truck and running, and then they're not getting paid. Those guys can't put food on their tables. They can't feed their families.
And it's
You
been
know,
a big thing
absolutely,
in recent years, right?
absolutely, it has. So
So
you
can
have
can immigrants make a safe truck driver?
absolutely, yeah. We're both immigrants. We make
Yeah.
safe truck drivers. You know, So I mean, there's good immigrants, there's bad immigrants, there's great truck drivers, there's bad truck drivers. It just all depends
So
on
you're
how you want to go
saying
about it.
it's almost a philosophical question. Can safety be taught?
Absolutely, yeah. Safety can be taught. You
It
know,
can be, because let's
yeah,
suppose I come from a country where where safety standards are really low.
yeah,
So now I grew up in this country. Now my vision to safety is not as good as somebody who grew up in a country where safety is a huge thing,
hmm,
right? Or even laws and rules and whatnot, right?
yeah,
Now I let's say I migrate to Canada. Now I do have these habits that I bring with me,
hmm.
and you're saying I can be taught how to be safe and how to value safety, and
You're able to
that
teach an old dog new tricks.
carelessness,
Yeah.
my careless attitude can be changed.
Yeah, I'd say like our topic earlier of, it's really hard to untrain bad habits, but absolutely, if it's like a mandatory thing, if you're at a trucking company and they have a strict safety like policy guideline that you follow, that's what was great about mega carriers, in my opinion. If there's people who have bad habits and they worked for small trucking companies that never had the foresight to have monthly safety meetings and you know uh, and have like trainers on site and people that would basically audit the truck drivers to see how they were doing in terms of their paperwork and their driving habits and their attitudes. Stuff like mega carriers is great for people like that, where that's very regimented. There's a lot of money uh and policy and time and effort put into these safety standards, and these safety uh I'll call them programs. So um, if you take somebody like that and put them into a situation where they're going to have the utilities to work with to become a safer driver, then absolutely it can be trained. But you have to be willing to be trained. You have to be trainable. If you're untrainable and you think that your shit don't stink, you know and you're going to go on the road and think that how you drove in South America or India or wherever is how we do things in Canada or the States. That's just not how we do it here. Like very simply. So you have to assimilate in the terms of safe driving. So, and it can be taught. There's great truck driving schools, and there's great companies that will be a great light for people to like follow. And yeah, absolutely. So to answer your question, yes, you can train an old dog new
And
tricks.
what about the
Yeah.
people who think that all immigrants are bad drivers and bad commercial truck drivers? All immigrant trucking companies are bad trucking companies, and they're
Yeah.
risk to our lives, and
Oh man.
on and on and on.
That
And
whole thing, listen, there's been a
is that just?
lot.
It's not just a social media thing, by the way, right?
Yeah,
I think it's a real world thing.
definitely. Yeah, and it all depends who you talk to, right? Like me as a white guy, I go to the loading rack and I talk to another white guy, and they're gonna have some outlandish shit to say about Indian truck drivers. And and of course it's like I understand who you're talking about, but like the guy next to you loading is an Indian guy who was born and raised in Canada, and he's also like a byproduct of an immigrant family who came here from somewhere else, and it's not everybody. I mean, how many people that I know in the States who are old white dudes who are terrible truck drivers and have bad habits? You find it in everything, you know. So it's hard to get up here and speak about another group of people when I don't really know how a certain culture operates or what it's like over there or what it's like to move from, like, let's use India for example, to Canada and then bring bad habits with you. I mean, I can't speak on that, but of course I think what people get frustrated most is uh, if they see an accident happen or if they see this happen or uh, if it happens to be fatal or people are driving bad, if they find out that the guy's Indian, that just concretes their what they were thinking to begin with, so they can kind of live in their echo chamber of racism or whatever it is. So um, I don't know, like there's so many truck drivers that I know that I've learned a lot from in Canada who are Indian truck drivers or people who are from Asia or Europe or Australia, South America, wherever. Like I've learned a lot from a lot of people. It's really good to be trainable. It's really good to keep an open mind about becoming better at your craft. If you get too hung up on thinking that you're the best and that you can't learn, then that's just going to keep you behind. And you can learn something from everybody. It doesn't matter where they come from or how much experience they have. And but experience is key, for
It
sure.
is, yes. So Matthew, I want to thank you for your time
Absolutely.
and this great conversation.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoy the show. See you next
Yeah,
time. Take good care.
absolutely. Thanks, guys.